She thought marrying a rich man meant her struggles were over. But that mansion held storms no one warned her about. Stay with me now. This story ain't just about pain. It's about power, too. Maybe even yours. They met at a gallery in Brooklyn. He was all charm and tailored linen, sipping something French, talking art like he invented color. She was wearing thrifted pearls and a fire she ain't let nobody dim. Her name was Amara, dark-skinned beauty, with eyes like truth and skin like roasted chestnut in the winter sun. She carried herself like she knew who she was. Not loud, not soft either, just present, whole. When Daniel saw her, he smiled like he'd never seen sunlight before. Within 6 months, he proposed. Now you would think love like that would be celebrated, wouldn't you? But baby, some houses ain't built with love in the foundation. The day she stepped into the Whitmore mansion, her heels echoed like a warning. White walls, cold marble, and his mother, Clarice Whitmore, standing at the top of the staircase like a queen who smelled something foul. "Welcome," Clarice said, lips curved but eyes unmoved. "You must be Amira, yes? It's Amara, ma'am." Clarice hummed, looking past her. Such rich tones. Daniel always did enjoy his little phases. Little phase. That's what she called her. In front of the staff. In front of God. But Amara didn't flinch. She just smiled, soft and slow, the way only a black woman taught by storms can. That kind of smile that says, "You don't know me, but you will." Dinner was worse. Crystal clinking. Forks too loud. Clarice served veiled daggers between bites. "You know," she said, slicing her lamb too clean, "it's rare to find someone so grounded. Most women these days are so ambitious." Amara raised her brow. "I was raised to know the difference between ambition and desperation, Mrs. Whitmore." That was the first time the room went silent. Daniel laughed. Awkward, boyish, tried to smooth it over. But the tension stayed, like perfume trapped in old drapes. From that night on, Clarice made it her mission. She smiled in front of guests, complimented Amara's exotic glow, offered to help her learn how to carry herself among real society. Amara, though, she just watched. Watched how Clarice shook hands with power but never with warmth. Watched how Daniel flinched when his mother entered the room. Watched how silence held more truth than all their polished words. Behind every compliment was a cut. Behind every toast, a test. And yet, Amara stayed, not for the chandeliers or the garden parties, but for him, for Daniel, at least at first. But love, baby. Love can't survive where respect is starved. And when you see your worth, you stop asking for seats at tables built to reject you. Because sometimes, God will prepare your own table, right in the very house where they said you'd never belong. But that's not yet. We're just getting started. Because the night Clarice left that envelope in Amara's dressing room, the one marked private in gold ink, that was the night the story really began. And baby, you won't believe what was inside. They say curiosity killed the cat, but for Amara, it birthed a revolution. That envelope sat on the vanity like a dare. No return address, no stamp, just that gold script, private. It wasn't her name on it, but it was her room now, her house, her life. Daniel had left early that morning for a board meeting in Manhattan. Clarice, well, she was always around, but never with them, floating like smoke, smiling like knives. Amara hesitated, just for a second, but something in her bones whispered, "This ain't just paper. This is truth." She slid her finger under the seal. Inside, a letter, handwritten, crisp, elegant. "Daniel, darling, I warned you. Girls like her aren't built for our world. I understand rebellion. Your father had his own distractions. But marriage, surely this shall pass. She's too dark, too loud, in her silence, too determined. They never know when to stay in their place. No signature. But the ink stank of perfume and prejudice." Amara's hands trembled, but her face, stone still, like her spirit had heard worse before. Like that little girl from East Atlanta who'd been called Tar Baby in 5th grade, had already bled and healed. She folded the letter back, slow and careful, laid it where she found it, didn't say a word. Because some storms, baby, you don't meet with thunder. You meet with stillness, so deep it scares the sky. That evening, Clarice was all sugar and fake pearls. Darling, I've arranged a luncheon this Saturday. Some of the girls are dying to meet Daniel's wife. I told them you're quite the little fighter. Amara blinked. Fighter? Well, yes, I mean, look at you. You've come so far. From, where was it again? South of dignity. Amara smiled. But north of fear. Clarice's mouth twitched. She didn't like that. Didn't like Amara's calm. Didn't like how her dark skin glowed richer under the chandelier than any of her gold-plated china. But it wasn't just the racism. It was the threat Amara posed. Quiet, elegant, undeniable. That night, Daniel found Amara on the balcony. Everything all right? He asked, wrapping his arms around her. She leaned into him, breathing in his scent. Safe, familiar, for now. Your mother left something in our room, she said. Daniel tensed. She doesn't mean harm, he said, too quick. She's just used to a certain world. Amara turned, looking him dead in the eye. I am not a phase, Daniel. His eyes darted. Guilt, confusion, boyish panic. I never said... But she did. And you didn't correct her. Silence fell heavy between them. I love you, he said. I know, she replied. But love without defense is just decoration. She walked inside, left him standing in that cold night air. Because now, baby, she saw it clear. Love wasn't gonna save her in that mansion. Only truth would. And truth? It had claws. The next morning, a staff member slipped her a note when no one was watching. Just 5 words, scribbled fast. She's changing the will. Tonight. And that's when Amara made her decision. But baby, she didn't come this far to bow. You want to know what she did next? They say power is quiet, but silence in that house screamed louder than any fight Amara ever knew. The luncheon was held in the garden, under canopies of white silk and polite hatred. Women in pastel dresses and icy smiles, gold utensils that never touched real hunger. And at the center of it all, Clarice Whitmore, queen of her porcelain kingdom. Amara wore a royal blue dress, bold, beautiful, defiant. Her dark skin shimmered in the sun, and they noticed. Oh, they noticed. Clarice introduced her like a museum piece. This is Amara, Daniel's choice. That pause, sharper than glass. One woman, with a diamond crucifix and a tight little smirk, leaned in. So where did you two meet? A community outreach or something else charitable? Amara smiled. In a gallery. I was the curator. Daniel just happened to be standing near my work. Another woman giggled. How refreshing. A working woman. Daniel always did enjoy variety. Clarice sipped her wine. Didn't say a word. Amara sat there, dignified, elegant, coiled. The only black woman at that long white table. No one asked about her work. No one asked about her dreams. But they all stared like she was some rare bird that flew off the wrong branch. And baby, let me tell you, that kind of racism don't shout. It whispers. It excludes. It dresses up in pearls and pretends not to see you. When dessert came, they passed plates around. Lavender creme brulee with gold flakes. But no one passed one to Amara. She looked across the table. Every woman eating, every hand full, except hers. Clarice tilted her head, eyes cold as glass. Oh, did we miss you, dear? Amara rose slowly, smoothed her dress, and with a voice so calm it cracked the air, she said, You never forgot me. You just hoped I wouldn't notice. Then she walked away, didn't wait for gasps or explanations, because sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can do. But that night, something changed. Daniel came to her, eyes red. My mother, she altered the trust, removed me from primary beneficiary unless I... He stopped. Unless you what? Amara asked. He looked down. Unless I get the marriage annulled. Amara didn't cry, didn't scream. She just whispered, She's trying to buy your spine. And in that moment he had to choose, bloodline or backbone, privilege or partnership, mother or wife. But he said nothing. And silence, baby, is an answer too. Because the next day, Amara made a phone call Clarice never saw coming. You ready to hear who picked up that line? Sometimes the most dangerous thing a black woman can be is informed. The voice on the other end of the line was soft, southern, and steel. Rosalie James, estate law. Who's calling? This is Amara Whitmore, she said. First time she'd used the full name out loud. felt like sliding a sword from silk. I need to talk about the Whitmore family trust. There was a pause, then a shift in tone. I've heard of you, Rosalie said. You've got more allies than you think. Rosalie used to work for the Whitmores, handled their property deals, tax loopholes, prenuptials. She was sharp, unshakable, and black. Clarice didn't like that, so she had her replaced years ago, quietly. But Rosalie didn't forget. Over warm tea and cold facts, she laid it all out. Daniel's grandfather had created a clause. If any heir was removed from the trust because of race or marriage, that clause would activate a legal review. The only copy of that clause, buried in a document Clarisse had sealed away in the East Wing library vault. You find that paper, baby, Rosalie said, and the house don't belong to her anymore. Amara's heart beat steady. The mansion had always felt like a gilded cage, but now it felt like a map. That night she waited until Clarisse left for her opera club, wore soft heels, no perfume, silence as armor. The East Wing was always locked, but she had watched the housekeeper for months, learned the codes, noted the habits. Every closed door becomes a crack if you patient. Inside the vault room, ledgers, dusty safes, files with names of power. She searched with hands that didn't shake, and then she found it. A brown folder labeled Whitmore Legacy Clause, 1964. Inside the sentence that shifted everything. No heir shall be disinherited due to racial discrimination or lawful marriage, or the estate is forfeit to said heir's spouse, pending legal confirmation. She held that paper like it was gold. Because it was. Just then, footsteps. Quick, sharp. She turned. Clarisse, standing in the doorway. Lipstick, perfect. Rage glowing under her skin. I knew you'd dig, girl. That's what your kind does. Always clawing for scraps. Amara walked toward her. Graceful. Unafraid. I'm not clawing, she said. I'm claiming. Clarisse's eyes narrowed. You think a document makes you one of us? Amara smiled. No, it makes you one of mine. And baby, if looks could kill, Amara would have dropped right there. But words. Words are sharper than daggers when you tell the truth. And the next morning the family lawyer rang the doorbell, holding papers that would bring the whole house down. The lawyer's name was Elliot Crane. Pressed suit, neutral smile, eyes like polished stone. He'd served the Whitmores for over 30 years. But that morning, he didn't bow to Clarisse. He walked straight to Amara, hand extended. Mrs. Whitmore, he said. Clarisse flinched. I believe we have a matter to discuss. They met in the sunroom, all three of them. Clarisse, Daniel, and Amara. Light poured through the tall windows like truth had finally kicked the doors open. Elliot opened his briefcase, laid out the clause, laid out the history. Amara has legal standing to assume full control of the East Hampton estate, should it be proven that disinheritance was motivated by prejudice. Clarisse's voice cracked like a whip. This is absurd! I was protecting my son's future. That girl, that woman, Elliot interrupted, is your daughter-in-law, and the law does not respect racism dressed as concern. Daniel sat frozen. The boy inside him shrunk, but the man finally stood up. Mother, he said, voice shaking. You lied. You tried to erase her. Clarisse turned to him, eyes wide. I raised you, and I'm ashamed of who that made me, he whispered. A silence fell. Amara didn't gloat, didn't smirk. She simply said, You thought I was temporary, a shadow on your perfect world. But I'm the woman your son chose, and now I'm the woman this house answers to. Clarisse stood, straightened her pearls, but there was something in her eyes, not just anger, fear, because for the first time, she wasn't the most powerful woman in the room. Elliot slid the paperwork toward Amara. If you sign here, Mrs. Whitmore, the transition will begin. The inheritance, the deeds, the nameplate on the gate. Amara looked at the pen, but she didn't sign. Not yet, because some victories need to be seen. And so she planned one final dinner, one final gathering in that cold white mansion. The invitations were written by hand, each one sealed in gold, addressed not to society's finest, but to every woman Clarisse ever tried to erase. She invited Rosalie James, the lawyer who gave her fire a path, the Whitmore housekeepers, Black and brown women with stories tucked under silence. Her sister Layla, who raised her when the world tried to break them both. Her mentor from Spelman College, the one who taught her to walk like history, was watching. And yes, even Clarice herself. The dining room had never held such light. Candle flames danced like ancestors clapping in the corners, the air thick with perfume, spices, and something deeper. Reckoning. Amara wore white, not to mimic them, but to reclaim it, pure, sharp, radiant against her dark skin. A vision. Clarice entered, draped in old pride and fresh bitterness. The table stretched before her, but this time her seat wasn't at the head. Amara stood there. "Dinner is served," she said, voice rich as mahogany. They ate soul food in silence. Fried okra, collards, peach cobbler that tasted like memory. No foie gras, no caviar, just nourishment. Mid-meal, Amara stood. "I used to think this house was a reward," she said. "A prize for marrying into power." She looked at Clarice. "But it was a test." She turned to the table. "You all were never meant to be here. But here you are. And I own this house now. But more than that, I own myself." A cheer rose like thunder made of joy. Clarice stared, lips tight. "You'll ruin this legacy." Amara smiled. "No, Clarice. I'm rewriting it." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out the signed deed. She placed it on the table. In full view, Amara Whitmore, sole inheritor of the East Hampton estate. Stamped, sealed, irrefutable. Clarice rose, face pale, didn't say a word. "But baby," her eyes burned with something that finally looked like loss. And as the guests clinked glasses, Daniel slipped Amara a small velvet box. Inside, a second ring, one she'd never seen before. It wasn't flashy, no diamond screaming for attention, just a gold band, thick, simple, strong, the kind of ring that meant something. Daniel looked her in the eye. No stuttering this time, no boy left. "I had it made for our 1-year anniversary. Didn't give it to you because I was still letting her win." His voice cracked. "I let her infect my silence, and for that, I'm sorry." Amara touched the ring, felt the weight of it, honest, unfinished. She didn't answer right away, just stared out into the chandelier light like it was the moon back home. "Do you love me?" she asked softly. "With everything I am?" "Then show me. Not with jewels, not with promises, with actions that don't need witnesses." Daniel nodded, eyes shining. "I will. Every day." He slid the ring onto her finger, her other hand already adorned with the one from their wedding. This one wasn't to replace. It was to repair. Later that night, while the guests lingered in laughter and sweet tea, Amara found herself standing in the garden, barefoot, quiet. "Sometimes the wind speaks, baby." And that night, it whispered memory. She thought about her mother, gone now. Dark-skinned woman who scrubbed floors and held pride in her spine. How she used to say, "They'll try to shrink you, Mara. Smile while they slice. But remember, you ain't built for begging. You're built for blooming." And now, here she was, in the very garden her mother would have been banned from, planting herself in power. But just as peace kissed her shoulders, a voice behind her cut the air. "You should know. There's something Daniel never told you." It was Marjorie, the eldest cousin, Clarice's shadow, always watching. Amara turned slow, steady. "What is it?" Marjorie looked around, lowered her voice. "The inheritance wasn't the only thing Clarice was trying to erase. There's a document, hidden, a second will, not about money." Amara's heart slowed. "What kind of will?" Marjorie looked at her like she was holding a ghost. "One that names you guardian of something much more dangerous." And baby, when Amara opened that secret drawer the next day, what she found had her gripping the edge of the desk, breath locked in her chest. The drawer was hidden in the study, beneath layers of false bottom wood and velvet lining. Clarice had protected it like it held the bones of her bloodline. Inside, a leather folder. No label, no seal. But what it held changed everything. Amara opened it slowly. The first page, a black and white photo. A baby girl, dark-skinned, big eyes, wrapped in hospital linen. The second page, a birth certificate. Mother, Clarice Whitmore. Father, unknown child, Lena Grace. Whitmore. Date, 1978. Amara's breath caught. A daughter? She flipped the next page. This document affirms that should Clarice Whitmore pass, without publicly acknowledging her daughter, custody, guardianship, and estate rights may fall to any surviving female heir of stable standing, should they prove protection of said child's lineage and name. It was signed by a lawyer, stamped by the county, and scrawled across the bottom in Clarice's familiar handwriting. This never happened. Amara staggered back. She'd known Clarice was cold. But this? Hiding a daughter for decades? Her mind raced. Where was Lena now? Who raised her? Did Daniel even know he had a sister? She rushed to the master bedroom, papers in hand. Daniel was there, reading. When he saw her face, he stood. What happened? She threw the folder on the bed. You have a sister, Daniel. Clarice hid her, erased her. His face twisted. Shock, confusion, denial. No, that can't be. Amara pointed. Her name is Lena, and according to this, I'm her legal guardian. If Clarice dies without claiming her. Daniel sank onto the edge of the bed. My mother hid a child? Amara's voice broke, but her back stayed straight. She didn't just hide her. She disowned her for being born dark like me. A silence heavier than grief filled the room. Amara picked up the photo. The baby's eyes, they looked just like hers. Wide, watchful, waiting. Then Daniel whispered, There's a locked wing in the north corridor. She always said it was under renovation. But I've heard noises there. Amara's heart dropped. You think she's still here? Daniel looked at her. I think we need to find out. And baby, when Amara turned that old brass key and opened that door, what she saw inside was nothing short of haunting. The key was cold in her hand. Old brass, shaped like ivy. Daniel held the flashlight. Amara held her breath. The north wing had always been off limits. Under restoration, Clarice said. But there was no dust sheet, no ladder, no sound of hammers, just silence. And that silence, baby, was hiding something alive. They opened the door. First came the smell. Lavender, faint, faded. Then light, filtered through yellowed curtains and decades of secrecy. It was a bedroom, small, clean, too clean. Stuffed animals lined the dresser, books stacked neatly, a single twin bed, untouched, except for the indent in the middle. Then, movement. Amara turned, heart thundering. In the far corner behind a sheer divider curtain, a woman stood, late 30s, deep brown skin, hair coiled into soft braids, eyes wide, wild, alert. She clutched a teddy bear to her chest like it was armor. Daniel froze. Lena, the woman flinched. Who are you? Her voice, soft, high, like a girl's, like someone trapped in time. Amara stepped forward, tears in her throat. My name is Amara. I'm your sister-in-law. I found the papers. I found you. Lena looked down at her feet, then back up. She said the world didn't want me, that I was better safe, that my skin would ruin the family name. Daniel's hand trembled. She kept you here? For years, Lena whispered. Only the maid talked to me. They stopped her when I turned 20. Amara felt fury rise in her throat like fire, but she swallowed it, because this moment wasn't about rage. It was about rescue. Lena, she said gently, you don't have to stay in this room anymore. Lena hugged her bear tighter. But where would I go? Amara knelt beside her. You come with me, to the head of the table, to the light. That night, Clarice returned from a gala, jewels still around her neck, ego wrapped around her like fur. She stepped into the foyer and froze because standing at the top of the staircase was Lena. Not hidden, not caged, just seen, alive. Clarice's face went pale. You have no right. Amara's voice rang out like thunder wrapped in velvet. She's your daughter. And from this moment on, she's my family. And I own this house now, which means you. You're a guest. Act accordingly. Clarice trembled. For once, words failed her. But baby, it wasn't over. Because in the shadows, someone else had been watching. Someone who wasn't ready to let go of the Whitmore crown. Morning came with fog, thick and stubborn. Like the house itself was trying to hide what was coming. They were in the parlor, Amara, Daniel, and Lena, when the doorbell rang. 3 knocks. Slow. Sure. Uninvited. Daniel opened it. And there he was, Stephen Whitmore. Clarissa's brother. Older. Meaner. Twice as cold. Exiled years ago for financial misconduct. But power don't die easy, baby. It just waits. Stephen stepped inside like he never left. Well, well, the new lady of the manor, I presume. His eyes slid over Amara like she was something to be priced and ignored. She didn't move, didn't flinch. State your business, she said. He smiled. That clause you used to claim the estate? Let's just say I found another one. And my copy says if the Whitmore heir is deemed mentally unstable. He looked at Lena. The property defaults to the next male relative. Amara stood up slowly. Try me, Stephen chuckled. You think your pretty speeches and legal tricks can undo centuries of power? I don't need centuries, she said. Just the truth. And it's standing in this room. Lena stepped forward, trembling, but tall. I'm not broken, she said. I was hidden. And that's not the same thing, Daniel added. And the clause, already reviewed. Amara filed it yesterday, with 3 witnesses. It's sealed. Stephen's eyes flicked. Trap. Sprung. Amara folded her arms. You came here with old rules, but I rewrote the game. Now get out of my house, Stephen sneered. But he backed away, and as he stepped off the porch, Clarisse stood watching from the stairs. No pearls, no mask, just a mother who'd lost control, and a daughter who finally had it. But baby, before she left for good, Clarisse asked to see Lena one final time, and what she whispered in that girl's ear, it changed everything. Clarisse sat on the edge of the blue velvet chair, hands folded like she was holding on to the last thread of control. Lena stood by the window, bathed in soft light, still holding that same bear, still unsure if this was real. Amara stood nearby, not interfering, just guarding. Because when truth walks in, you let it speak, but you watch the exits. Clarisse's voice was soft, too soft, the kind that sounds gentle but hides a blade. I used to sing to you, she said, in secret, hummed gospel under my breath. But every time I looked at you, I saw him. Lena blinked. Him? Clarisse stared at the floor. Your father. He wasn't supposed to. He was the gardener's son, dark as molasses. Your grandfather threatened to disown me, said a black baby in this family would ruin us. Her voice cracked. So I chose survival. I told them you died, and I kept you hidden to protect you. That's what I told myself, over and over. Lena's breath caught. You hid me, not to protect me, but to protect your name. Clarisse finally looked up, and for once, her eyes weren't hard. They were hollow. I didn't know how to love you and survive you at the same time. A long silence wrapped the room. Lena stepped closer, eyes full of tears that had waited decades for release. You could have just loved me. Clarisse reached out her hand, but Lena didn't take it. Instead, she said, I don't hate you, but I won't carry your guilt like a second skin. She turned to Amara, voice steadier now. I want to live outside this house, outside her shame. Amara nodded. We'll build you a new home, one where your name isn't a secret. And as they walked out, together, Clarisse whispered the last thing she would ever say to her daughter. You were the only thing I ever made that was real. And baby, real don't mean right. Real don't mean righteous. Sometimes, real just hurts. But the past wasn't done yet, because buried in Lena's room was a letter. One Clarisse never meant her to read. It was tucked beneath the lining of an old music box. Wooden, faded, still played. His eye is on the sparrow, when opened. Lena had never noticed the false bottom, but when she lifted it, a folded paper fluttered out, aged yellow, ink smudged at the corners. Amara unfolded it gently. The handwriting wasn't Clarisse's, it was his, the father. The man Lena never knew, the man Clarisse erased. To my daughter, if this letter ever finds you, it means I failed. Not because I left, but because they wouldn't let me stay. Your mother loved me in the quiet, in the shadows. But when the light came, she chose them. I wanted to fight. I begged to raise you. They threatened me, paid me off. And when that didn't work, they sent me away. But hear this, baby girl. Your skin is not a sin. Your presence is not a mistake. You are not too dark for love. You are the daughter of a man who saw the stars in you, long before you opened your eyes. Elijah. Lena wept, for the father she never touched, for the truths she was never told. Amara held her as her shoulders shook, not as a savior, Not as a sister-in-law, but as a witness, because sometimes all we need is someone to say, "I see you. I believe you. I know you deserved better." Daniel walked in moments later. He read the letter, wordless, then kissed Lena's forehead. "Welcome to the family," he said. She smiled through her tears. "Feels like I finally arrived." Amara folded the letter and placed it inside the frame above the fireplace. Not her own portrait, but his, Elijah, a dark-skinned man the mansion tried to erase, now hanging above all their heads. But baby, one piece still hadn't fallen into place, because Clarice, before leaving for good, had made one final transaction, and the truth about that would shake everything Amara thought she knew. It came in the mail, no knock, no warning. A thick envelope from a private bank in Geneva, stamped, sealed, foreign. Amara opened it slowly. Inside, notarized documents, a trust, a transfer, a signature, Clarice Whitmore. The date? 2 days before the dinner. The document named a sole recipient of her personal fortune. Assets separate from the estate. Not Daniel, not Lena, not Stephen. Amara. Tears pricked her eyes, but not from joy, from confusion. Why? Why leave everything to the woman you spent years trying to humiliate? The answer came scribbled at the bottom of the final page. A note, handwritten. "I was raised to believe light skin meant grace, that whiteness was safety. But I watched you walk through fire and never burn. You didn't need our name. You made your own. Use this money to build something that won't forget its roots." Clarice Amara sat down, breath shallow. This wasn't apology, wasn't redemption. It was recognition, the kind that comes too late to heal, but not too late to matter. She looked at Daniel, at Lena, at the house that once tried to shrink her spirit, and she made a decision. That night, Amara stood before the same guests who'd once doubted her. But this time, not in silk, not in gold. She wore a kente shawl over a white blouse, bare-faced, bare-souled. And she said, "This house was never meant for me, but I claimed it. And now, I return it to those who were never invited in." Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel stepped forward. "What are you saying?" "I'm turning the Whitmore estate into a foundation," she said, "for dark-skinned girls who were told they were too much, too loud, too bold, too black." She paused. "No girl should grow up thinking she has to marry into worth. She is the worth." The applause came slow, then strong, then sacred. And Lena, she was the first to stand, clapping with hands that used to tremble, smiling like sunlight through prison bars. But just as the celebration swelled, Amara's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. She pressed play, and what she heard made her knees weaken. "You don't know everything. Clarice wasn't the only one watching you. Look under the chapel floorboards before it's too late." A man's voice, familiar, southern, cold, and baby. When she pried open those dusty floorboards the next morning, she found something buried that Clarice took to her grave. The chapel had been unused for years, built by Clarice's grandfather in the 1930s, a whitewashed sanctuary meant to impress Sunday guests, not save souls. But now, the dust was sacred. Daniel helped lift the floorboards. Lena stood nearby, arms wrapped around herself, praying soft. And then, thump, wooden box, locked. Amara opened it with the same brass key that unlocked Lena's wing. Inside, a black leather ledger, old, frayed, marked in red ink. She flipped through page after page, names, dates, amounts. But it wasn't money being tracked. It was transactions of silence. Housekeepers paid off after witnessing abuse. Nannies dismissed and silenced after overhearing racist remarks. Donations to judges. A woman, Elijah's mother, paid $10,000 in 1980 to never contact her son again. It was Clarisse's legacy, not in pearls, not in porcelain, but in hush money. Daniel looked sick. Lena covered her mouth. Amara just closed the book and said, "This goes public." That evening she stood in front of the same fireplace where Elijah's portrait hung, and she held up the ledger for every camera to see. "Let this be the last secret this house ever tries to bury," she said. She handed it to Rosalie, the lawyer who had once been pushed out. This story won't be told by them anymore, Amara said. It'll be told by us. Rosalie nodded. And in that moment, baby, justice didn't wear a robe. It wore locks and dark skin and a voice that didn't shake. The next day, news outlets buzzed. The Whitmore name, once clean as bleach, now covered in blood. But Amara didn't flinch. She walked through the mansion one last time, paused in the hallway, touched the wallpaper, then opened the front door and stepped out. Because now, baby, she was no longer the outsider who married in. She was the woman who rebuilt the whole house from its ashes. 1 year later, the mansion didn't look the same anymore. Gone were the white statues and stiff portraits. In their place, murals of women with skin rich like earth and eyes full of knowing. The Whitmore estate had a new name now. The Grace House. A refuge, a school, a home for every dark-skinned girl who'd been told she was too much, too bold, too brown, too brilliant for this world. And baby, they came. From Brooklyn, from Birmingham, from Baton Rouge. They came. Amara stood at the gate, now redone in iron and brass, not just guarding a house, but welcoming a legacy. Lena was the director of healing services. She walked the halls every day, smiling without apology, her voice no longer quiet, her steps no longer small. Daniel ran the foundation's business wing, no longer hiding behind his last name, but lifting it like a banner of reparation. And Amara, she taught, not from a textbook, from life. She taught them how to speak in rooms that want them silent, how to walk into spaces built to erase them and leave footprints they can't ignore. On the anniversary of the foundation's opening, they held a ceremony, small, powerful. Every girl who'd ever been told she wasn't the right shade stood in a circle. They lit candles, each flame a name, a story, and above the fireplace in the main hall, in a golden frame once meant for Clarisse, hung a portrait, Amara Whitmore, not in pearls, not in silk, but in her kente shawl, bare-faced, looking forward, not back. Underneath it, carved in iron, she was too dark for their world, so she built her own. The crowd went quiet. Then one of the girls, tiny, bold, beautiful, asked, "Auntie Amara, was it worth it?" Amara knelt, smiling that slow, deep smile. "Every scar I carry made this house possible. Every door they slammed made me carve one open. So yes, baby, it was worth it. And me? I'm Aunt Grace. I've seen women like Amara my whole life, doubted, dismissed, but never defeated. She walked into that mansion carrying her dignity like a crown, but they only saw her skin, not her soul. They said she didn't belong in that house, but now her portrait hangs in the golden frame above the fireplace. If this story touched your heart like it touched mine, leave a word below. Let somebody know you saw her, heard her, felt her. Aunt Grace is always here with stories for souls that been through the fire and came out shining. Fim.